And this study is going to be, how do you want to say it? It's kind of to the youth, or not really youth, but to the young adult. And it's good for us too, because I'm sure as adults we're going to recognize some of the stuff. And it's also going to help us to help guide and to see and recognize things as we go through life. But the study is going to be titled Life Quest, Braving Adulthood with Biblical Passions. And then we think about culture pulls you backwards, God calls you forward. Choose the path of most resistance. When we think about the world we live in today, there's certainly a lot of resistance, isn't there? When we think about trying to live godly, there's going to be resistance against it. But lesson 1 is titled, I want to be for again. All right? I want to be for again. Well, let's think about this a little bit here. We think about, I want to be for again, the root cause of refusing to grow up. Well, we all know what I want means. We all know what to be for again, and and we think, oh, the root again. Remember, we had a study a few, well, could be months, could be a year ago, but we talked about the root. We talked about a root, and we're not. What do we think about the root cause of refusing to grow up? What is a root? Again, anybody recall what we talked about a root was?
Foundation.
Yeah, that's a foundation of something. What's it a foundation of? A tree or a plant of some kind. And where do you normally find the root?
Under the ground.
Under the ground, yeah. The root is usually found under the ground. And what does that root do? Grows. It grows, and it provides. What does it provide to a growing tree? What does that root provide? Nourishment. Yeah, it's kind of what kind of causes it to grow. It's a source or an origin of life for it, right? But think about it. I want it to be for again the root cause of refusing to grow up. What is it to refuse? When you refuse something, what are you?
Rebellious.
You're rebellious. Yeah, you're rebellious. So you're unwilling to do something, aren't you? When you refuse to do something, you're unwilling to do it. And we think about refusing to grow up. And when you grow up, what does that mean? Refusing to grow up. What does that mean?
Mature.
Yeah, and mature, increase in size by a natural process, and to mature. And as Christians, we ought to desire to not stay as a child, but we ought to desire to grow up, right? Let's look at our text verse. The text verse is going to be found in 1 Corinthians 13:11. Elmer, please.
When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things.
All right, so let's think about this a little bit. When I was a child, I spake as a child. All right. What is it, when you think about child, what is it when I was a child, what is it, when you think about a child, what comes into your mind? Little kid. And we think about it as, we have the thought of, not so much infant we're talking about here, but we're talking about as, you get a little older, like a minor, but simple-minded. When you're a child, you're just simple-minded, aren't you? You don't really think about things a whole lot, what else? You're immature. Right? You talked about growing up and being mature, but as a child, you're immature. And we think about it in the Christian realm. Think about an immature Christian. No, a young Christian, immature Christian, young Christian. All right. And I understood as a child. And we think about when we understand, what is that? Regard things. When we understand things, we regard things, we think of them in a certain way, right? But then it has to, I understood as a child. I thought as a child. Now, what is it to think? So when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, and I thought as a child. What is it to think or thought? What does that have in mind? Well, when you think about things, what do? You kind of take them into inventory, don't you? You think about something or thought, you think about something, you take inventory, you kind of meditate on it, you think about it. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. So what is it to put away? What is it? When we read the part here, it says, I put away childish things. Put away. What does that mean to you? What does that come up to you in your mind as you think about
To
it?
place something where it belongs.
Place somewhere it belongs. To render entirely. When you put it away, you would render something entirely useless or idle. You cease to do it. You put it away. All right. So as we see here, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. And the childish things here refers back again to the simple-minded person and immature. All right. So as we go through this lesson too, one thing this lesson is this particular study is a lot different in the way it's laid out than my other lessons I've been doing, and so I encourage you as we go through things. There's a lot of good verses that will go with some of the thoughts that we do here. So if a thought that we are talking about and a verse pops up in your mind, I encourage you to go ahead and share it. You know what I mean? Because I'm gonna go through, and this is more or less an introductory today, but as we go, I'm gonna be picking out a lot of scripture verses that go with it. But by all means, I encourage you, if we have a thought and you know a scripture verse that'll go with it, or we can find it, in your Strong's when we're talking, I encourage you to go ahead and share it. Just raise your hand and say, hey, this verse goes with this thought, and we can all write it down. Overall, it's a study on going through life here. The lesson aim here is to introduce two key words of a successful adult life. And what do you think two key words could be of a successful adult life that we've just kind of been talking about?
Maturity and responsibility.
Ooh, you got it. You're looking at the. You're looking at it. You're cheating. Yeah, you're cheating. That's good. That's good. But we have our aim is to go through. We think about maturity and responsibility and why they matter. And then also to help us to understand that maturity and responsibility are both blessed in adult life. Okay. As we go through our lessons here, the first two are going to be focused on what is holding us back. Think about in our life and how we serve and how we live for the Lord. What is holding us back? And identifying the things that draw young adults into problems and preventing their lives from being blessed and abundant as God designed. Our lives are, if we are in God's will, we've been talking in past lessons about being in God's will, being submissive. And when we find ourselves in God's will, we'll find that problems and things that come up in our lives can be avoided or could be avoided. But we talked about the school of hard knocks. Anybody hear that? These young adults, what do? We know it all. Mom and dad tell you something. Yeah, right. And then we find out in time, might not admit it out and open out to people and to our adults, or our parents, but we realize that they were right. But hopefully, our thought is what is holding us back. That's kind of the thought we're going to have our theme. So again, we want to keep focused on this phrase, what is holding us back. There are things that are keeping us from going forward in life. And we think about one before again, you want to kind of stay young, you don't want to, you don't want to step to the next level and maturity. You just want to, have the easy life and play and just be childish and simple-minded. And then as we go, we're gonna go through some of the problems of present-day young culture. We think about the culture we live in today. Are there any problems we can think about? Boy, there's a whole bunch of them we could probably blurt out and write down a bunch of them, couldn't we? We're going to go through that in a little bit too. But we think about the message that the past couple generations has given young adults that present little motivation to embrace the maturity and responsibility of courageous adulthood. And hopefully as we go through this lesson, we'll have it'll challenge us to embrace both maturity and responsibility. All right, so let's have a definition of, let's define maturity. What does maturity mean to you? What pops into your thought is being mature?
Rational.
Rational, yeah. We have the thought when you're rational, you're able to grow and develop. But we have the thought of having reached full natural growth and development. You know, when the plant's growing, it's just a seedling, you know, it's little, and then as it grows, it matures into, whether it's a tree, or it's an apple tree, or a rose, or whatever it is. When it's matured, it is the full natural development. And we think as being, as we grow as Christians, you know, we're not going to be the same when we first learned of Christ and we first worked in our lives as we are to the end, the later years, where it's a constant growing. And then how about responsibility? When you think of responsibility, what comes into your mind for a definition or a thought of responsibility?
My own personal life experience is when you're responsible, you're not only responsible for you, but those around you as well. That's just my
Yeah. Yeah, when you're responsible, and when you're responsible, though, let's say you're responsible, who are you responsible to? When you're responsible to someone else, you have to give an account, don't you? When we think about our lives, and when we go through our lives, we're liable and required to give an account is one's actions or of, and also the duty and the trust that was placed in us, right? So when you're responsible, you have a responsibility, you're liable, and you give an account. All right. So as we go through this lesson, hopefully we would like to gather some things out of it. Some of the things we would like to gather out of this lesson is understanding the factors that contribute to a collective culture coma. We're going to be going through that. Collective culture coma. All right? Understand the tendencies in all of us to stay immature. There are tendencies in us to want to stay immature. But understanding the tendencies in us to avoid responsibility. Has anybody ever done that? Anybody here? I think we're all guilty of that, avoiding some kind of responsibility or some kind of avoiding it. But we ought not do that. And then to see the contrast of immaturity versus maturity. I didn't look those up. I don't know why I didn't. But when we think about immature, we probably don't need to look that one up. What think about immature? Can one recognize the difference between immaturity and maturity? What are someone's immature? What would you say? If someone's immature, what would you see in them, or what would you expect to see in someone that's immature?
Haven't reached full growth potential.
They haven't reached full growth potential. Probably whiny, you know. Probably what else, you know? Not wanting to do a whole lot, I suppose. Then you think about mature. What are some tendencies or what are some things you would see in a mature person or mature adult?
Thinking about others rather than yourself.
Well, yeah, those are some good thoughts. Yeah, definitely mature. Maybe putting others first, and yeah. All right. And then we have here the thought also to choose to pursue maturity for a successful adult future. And we can all not even us as adults, right? Okay. So here again, our lesson. The title is "Want to Be For Again." The root cause of refusing to grow up. And our text verse is, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. And this kind of started out kind of good because I was like, it starts out, ever meet someone who loves snakes? Now, we have a cousin that loves snakes. She has snakes. And you like snakes, but I'm telling you what, I'm not a snake guy. I don't know, I mean, and the author, the one that wrote the book here, he's looking at this and he's not a snake guy either. But anyway, but it's not normal for people to like snakes. I mean, it's normal. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about it. If you like snakes, that's okay, but for the most part, I think people are kind of, you like snakes? No. So I don't like snakes. Anyway, let's see what's the percent here. People that like snakes, raise your hand. Or that people that don't like snakes, raise your hand. Okay, here we go. Any people that like snakes, raise your hand. Like them. Yeah, people that like them. So we got like 4 people here that like snakes, maybe in between. But overall, you can see we have a tendency that we don't like snakes. But somewhere we have here the thought that personally the author of the book says he's not a fan of snakes, and I'm not a fan of snakes either. So this makes it easy for me. But it's not really that you fear them. It's just they're kind of just nothing about them that that's cool, you know? And I kind of do it. He makes the comment that the only good snake is a dead snake. And I kind of like that there too. When I'm working, I'll even mess up my line to get one and kill it. I mean, I'll be, you know, I'll go across and then I'll have to go across the line 4 or 5 times to get it straightened out. But I'll veer out to the side and, you know, take care of it. But, so anyway, I'm trying to think here. I told you this story. My first encounter with a snake was, I was a kid, and I was helping my mom and my grandma. They used to clean cottages in Omena. In fact, it was Rural Cottage, and those that work with me, you know what Rural Cottage is. Right in front of that house where the steps come down and the bushes are, my job was to sweep sidewalks and to pick up the trash outside. And I went outside and I was sweeping the sidewalk and I was picking up trash. But I reached down to grab what I thought was like a black tube or who knows what it was. But there was a snake sunning himself on the sidewalk. And I think that freaked me out. That was my first encounter with snakes. And then when I picked it up and it started moving and hissing at me, that was it. You know, I was like, you know, I was expecting to be like a garden hose. Who knows what I was expecting. Anyway, so snakes are not any good. But here's the thought. And as we're going to kind of go and we're going to think about this, this is kind of going to kind of give us our thoughts, and we're going to associate it with our Christian lives and adult lives and whatnot. But so the author has an account where he was in Milton, Florida, and there was a park just on the north side of town that ran along the river. And as it emptied into the bay, it was a peaceful place with picnic tables, shady spots, and a boat launch, and one less snake than he found a few days ago, a few months ago. So here he was. He just had completed a few hours of boating with his parents. The boat was back on the trailer, and the kids were in the car, and I was making one last trip to the trash can. That's when I happened to come across a snake, slithering its way through the grass towards the parking lot. Oh, good, I thought. Another snake gets to die. And I began planning his demise. So here's this snake in the grass, slithering around. And he's thinking, should I step on him? Should I grab him with a stick and beat him? Should I pour some gas on him and set him on fire? So many excellent choices. All the while I'm watching and following him towards the parking lot. I knew exactly where he was headed. He was on the riverside of the parking lot and was planning to go across the lot about 25 yards into the woods. He was a determined fellow to get there. This snake was on a mission, but he was completely unprepared for what he was about to face. And as young adults, we could be thinking about this and kind of applying it. But by now my family was waiting in the car, and they were wondering, why is he mesmerized with the ground? But I was in a hurry, and I couldn't take my eyes off this snake. I couldn't let him get away. Then the coolest thing happened. He reached the pavement. Now this is one hot summer day in the middle of the heat wave, and the pavement was at least 110 degrees. The first 10 yards, he was fine. He was tracking, and I was tracking closely behind him. The next 5 yards, I noticed he slowed slightly. I was puzzled. The next 5 yards, he really began to struggle, and he couldn't go much further. And finally, about 1 yard from the pavement edge, the sun set this snake on fire. He was toast, literally. I never touched him. He never saw me. I never intervened. He just cooked himself. It was awesome. But I just love watching snakes die. Okay, well, so we got through this. Now, how can we apply that to our lives? And how can a young adult, a young Christian, apply that to his lives? And what do you? Any thoughts come to your mind? Any ways you can associate your young adult life to that? You think you got it all figured out? You start going across, and first thing you know, you get yourself in trouble, right? So anyway, I've seen a lot of young adults start out the same way, and so have you. Many begin their quest into their young adult life with some grand destination in mind, some incredible dreams to realize, only to find out they were ill-prepared for the journey before them. They launch out into a life self-confident, self-assured, and self-centered, only to cook themselves into trouble before youth is even out of sight. That little snake never knew what happened. He had no clue what he was going up against and how ill-prepared he was to face it. And so goes the life of many young adults in the 21st century, crash and burn as they spend the rest of their life picking up the pieces that seems to unwillingly be life's motto of many people in their 20s today. So we think about that. Is your story isn't all that different from that little snake. The roles are somewhat reversed. But rather than being a snake stalked by a person, you are a person being stalked by a snake. Who are we being stalked by? Who is that snake that stalked us? Satan, yeah. And I guess he came down under the snake eyes. Well, I don't know. But anyway, so Satan is definitely planning your demise. You know, we think about Satan. He's planning your demise, but he's also willing to just watch you sit back and cook yourself, right? You know, we think about it. But Satan is, he's definitely planning your demise, but he would be just as content to stand by and watch you cook yourself as that snake crossing the concrete, across that hot pavement. As your thought, you spent your earlier years by the river's edge, where the grass was lush and life was easy. Somewhere across that hot pavement of young adulthood, you envisioned your dreams and desires all becoming reality. It's getting from here to there that is confusing. It can be scary, frustrating, discouraging, and sometimes seem not worth the effort. Some young adults charge ahead, unprepared and ignorant, as they seem to do just fine for the first 20 or 30 years. Cooking yourself takes time. Sometimes you don't even realize what you've done until it's too late. And we think about that as we grow up as young adults. You know, we think we got it all figured out. We think we know what we got going on. When we realize that, oh, I'm in trouble. That's kind of like bees. Anybody ever realize when, at least it's been my experience, when you get in a situation, especially since I have become kind of allergic to them, or I've had allergic reactions to them, you're in some brush, or you're someplace in the ground, and all of a sudden there's one, and then all of a sudden there's two, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my goodness, they're swarming all around me, you know? And it's at that point it's kind of too late. Melissa, you had an experience with bees, didn't you? Kayaking down the river, you know, kind of get tangled up in the trees. And first thing you know, Melissa's in the water, jumping around. We're trying to help her after we realize what's going on. But it takes time to get in trouble. It takes time to realize you're in trouble. All right. Okay, most young adults in today's culture are deciding that the journey across the pavement in the future just isn't worth it. They've watched too many people before them crash and burn. They let fear cripple them, comfort to will them, and irresponsibility allure them. The river's edge seems like a nice place to spend the rest of your life. Just kind of stay back, you know. And have the thought here, and what's the title of our lesson again? I want to be four again. So we have the thought here of why grow up if you don't have to? Why not prolong this neverland exist in your 20s and 30s, and exist in your 20s and 30s? It sure beats cooking on hot pavement, right? When we think about culture today, we think about, you know, they talk about how people are staying living with mom and dad longer, you know, and not taking responsibility. And that's certainly our culture today. We have here the thought that others take the different approach. Some will take the approach entirely different. They'll realize the childhood must become a memory, and the future must be pursued by God's grace. They understand that He is a God of purpose, direction, and forward motion. And that is our God. He's a God of purpose, direction, and forward motion. We ought not just sit still and not whine or read how's it hot or cold, but we ought to be moving forward, serving Him. He desires us to diligently seek Him. He promises to reward them that do. And again, here's some verses. I didn't look them up because I didn't realize what went on, but there are some verses that probably go along with those thoughts. So if you know of one or think of one, we can go ahead and just kind of, yeah, there's a good verse for that. We can all be blessed by it. But they realize that life must move forward, and rather than freeze in fear or frustrations, they take a different path across the hot pavement. They choose to pursue those dreams in the future that is purposed in the will of God. They choose to diligently seek a future that looks so promising, yet so far away. And hence we arrive at the center of the message of this book, getting from here to there. So we think about this wanting to be four again, but you don't want to be four again, but how do you get from four to adulthood? And that's what we're going to look at. Choosing to venture forward in a culture that is moving backwards. Choosing to embrace adult responsibility and adult challenges and adult decisions, and then enjoying the immense blessings that follow. Choosing to believe that growing up and seizing the future is worth the risk and the effort and the pressure. Sure, growing up is sometimes a pain. Sure, everybody who grows up eventually dies. Sure, the pavement is hot sometimes, but growing up is worth it. Facing your future courageously in the will of God is worth it. Believing the Neverlands is worth it. You may not believe it now, but hopefully by the end of our study, you will. All right. So we have here the thought. We have some things that we're going to start talking about. And we think about one in your book. I don't know. I should have looked at it, but one in your book probably does it have the whole name or does it have something? Just take a look here. I should look at that. Okay. So understanding the collective culture coma. So that's what we're going to be talking about here. Understanding the collective culture coma. So what is it to understand? Well, to understand is to become aware. To understand, to become aware of the nature and significance of. To know or comprehend. Understanding the collective culture coma. What is it? What is collective? Well, collective is assembling into or viewed as a whole. Put it all together. Culture. What is culture? Well, we think about culture today. Wow. But culture has the thought of arts and beliefs, customs, institutional teachings, products of human work and thought considered as a unit. And we think about especially with regards to a particular subject, mode of expression. All right, we think about, and then of course a coma. Anybody know what a coma is? Everybody, or you eat too much on Thanksgiving, you know, and you like go into a food coma, you know, and you what? You just gotta, what do you do?
Just asleep.
Yeah, go into a state of deep, prolonged unconsciousness, right? That's what they have here for the definition. So, okay, so our author goes into a story that was in Time magazine. It was a cover story that provided a new phenomenon in American culture. And the story was entitled, Meet the Twixters. So anyway, I don't know if anybody ever heard that or any seen that. I don't read Time magazine because it's kind of a different magazine. Not one that I would follow, but anyway, this article was in this Time magazine, and it detailed the culture and the evolution of a new age group, a generation that is refusing to grow up. If you are between 17 and 30, you could be part of this generation. Now, this book, I'm not sure when this book is. It's a couple years old, so I mean, it could be could change where you're at, where you fall on that scale. But anyway, nonetheless, it has good thoughts. So here we go. So we think here and we see here that the article described what he would call a collective culture coma. It detailed how young adults are attempting to hit the pause button in life somewhere between 20 and 30 years of age. They're refusing to accept adult responsibility and rejecting the idea that they must move forward from their childhood and teen years. This is not a passing fad affecting merely some of the generation, but rather a new trend reflecting throughout the culture. Anybody recognize that, or anybody think that to be kind of true, not true?
No.
Yeah.
It really could, I don't even think it has to stop at 30. I think it could relate, I mean, this can relate to all of us.
Yeah.
Really.
No. So he's going to share some. We're going to have some excerpts of what were written in his article. And he says here, let's share some excerpts from this disturbing article, and then trends it exposes, and then let's take a look. So the author stated that these young adults lived off their parents, bounced from job to job, and having fun, but seemingly going nowhere. He said it's a generational hiccup, all right? Social sciences are starting to realize that the permanent shift is taking place in the way we live our lives. In the past, people moved from childhood to adolescence, and from adolescence to adulthood. But today, there's a new intermediate phase along the way. at the years of 18 until 25, and even beyond, they have become a distinct separate life estate, and they never go through that adolescence and adulthood. They just kind of pause. In which people stall for a few extra years, putting off the cage of being being an adult and having the responsibilities that go with them. They are betwixt between. So that's how they got the Twixters, because they're kind of stuck. They don't know which way to go. You could call them Twixters. The article continued and said the new period is a chance for young people to savor the pleasures of irresponsibility. Researchers feared that whatever culture machinery is used to turn kids into grown-up has broken down, and that society no longer provides young people with a moral backbone and the financial wherewithal to take their rightful place in the adult world. Could growing up be harder than it used to be? I want to be for it again. People want it. So, have you ever thought that perhaps as young adults you can identify with these feelings? And of course, we can all say, you think about, sometimes I've said, it'd be nice to be a kid again where you don't have the responsibility, but ultimately, I move forward, right? But perhaps as a young adult, you can identify with these feelings. You may find yourselves trapped in the middle of this messed up mindset. This collective cultured coma, brought on by generations gone before you, has collectively dropped the baton. Now we think about today's culture, and I'm not. If you play video games, how does it say? In moderation, everything's good, right? But we gotta be careful. But we have you thought that we've reared you on video games and TV shows like Friends. Now I gotta be honest, I really never watched the Friends show because whatever sitcoms, they were really nothing I wanted to kind of watch or take pleasure in, I guess you might say. So I've never had TV for years, so I really didn't watch this. I do know that it was, they had that culture that kind of encouraged this kind of culture, but we've reared kids up on video games and TV shows like Friends, leaving them completely unprepared for the future. For your generation, life is about high scores and sleeping and parties and visits to the coffee shop. Has you ever thought that, yes, my generation has failed, meaning as adults, where that cutoff was raising children, we made a mistake. We've taken away all reasons and ability, leaving you with empty dreams and complete lack of motivation to seize the future. Now let's think of some things. What are some things where the culture has failed? What is the main thing culture is trying to do right now? Confusing. How are they trying to confuse? What are they trying to take away from everything in the world or in schools? God, that's the first one. That's the first one. A is the first one. I don't know what you have in your book. I should probably look at it, but the first thing that they've taken away is God, your God. They've taken away your God. We've kicked him out of school, taken his laws away from your heart, told you he doesn't exist, and refused to let you pray to him in public. Therefore, you have no purpose for existence, no hope for eternity. You only have death to look forward to. Without him, life doesn't mean anything, and there are no absolutes upon which to stake your future. Think about that. Is that so true? They're trying to make it to where now there's no absolutes. There's no right, no wrong, no God, they're trying to confuse genders. They're trying to, it's just there's no stopping what they're doing right now. All right, what's another thought? I don't know, what's your book? Do you have any thoughts, or you have a couple words to give you a hint, or what? What's it saying?
We told you that blank from nothing.
All right, what have they told us that we have done? Well, they told us that we have evolved from nothing. Evolved is the word you're looking for. I got it now. I can see my words are underlined, so I know exactly what we're talking about. All right, so we got here, you've been told that you evolved from nothing. The only option when you destroy the Creator is to try to convince you against mountains of undisputable evidence. Undisputable evidence.
Evidence?
Undisputable is what I'm trying to spell. Thank you. And evidence too, yes. But they've let me see here. The only option when you destroy the Creator is to try to convince you against mountains of
Undisputable evidence.
evidence, yes, that you came from nothing and that you mean nothing. They've taught in public schools that you are merely a random biological matter that is evolving into something else. Your existence or our existence is purely accidental, and life was merely a survival of the fittest. So if we're just animals, why should you care to grow up? It really doesn't matter if your evolution is king. All right, if evolution is king. All right. Now we think about the other thing. We're trying to take away God, and trying to take away Creator and creation. And what is one of the worst things we're doing, in today's world? Well, they've shown us horrific examples of marriage and family. Think about how family's been destroyed. Think about how marriage has been destroyed. In record numbers, marriages have fallen apart. No one knows this better than you. Look at you. I mean, we all know people that married and it didn't work out. They're separated, they're divorced. Chances are better than 50% that you will experience this firsthand. Growing up with single parents or step-parent, people growing up with parents or single parents, grandparents. If you take our generational statistics by themselves, you would have to conclude that marriage doesn't work and that it's not worth trying. If you've grown up with a mom and dad together, you're most blessed. And if they're happily married, well, congratulations. That's all but extinct in this culture. As a whole, we haven't given you much reason to look forward to marriage and family. Oh, and what's this next one? What's D? D in our book. They've taken away God. They've told you that you evolved from nothing. Family and marriage they've given horrific examples of. And they've taught you that sex can be with anyone at any time, for any reason, safely. And I changed mine. I put intimate relations is what I actually put in my book, but I think it's all written here. But what a lie! Again, this is only a logical conclusion if God doesn't exist, and evolution is true, and marriage doesn't work. The deadly lie is cooking more hearts and souls. And we think about that snake getting cooked going across the pavement before I realized what was going on. But we think about this deadly lie is cooking more hearts and souls than I can possibly describe in one book. You don't realize you're being cooked by this one until you're nearly well done. Flat on the pavement, barely aware of what hit you. This is a big one. It's been a big factor in our world, really big. And then we'll be coming back to this later. And again, this is all mostly introduction to kind of get us going into it. Oh my, we're at the end. Okay, we're just gonna well, let's just stop here because there's no way I don't want to just blow through them. So we've got E, F, and G to go through yet. So I'll make a little note here. We left off on D. Let's see here. Sunday school. What's today's date? The 10th, right? All right. We'll close here, and I'd like to ask John.